Perhaps in this case, I will introduce myself. And I will just tell you in the end how grateful and honored and really touched I am by all these papers, all these ideas, all these arguments, all this form of dialogical engagement and suggestions. Thank you all very, very, very much. So a few words now about the thinking that runs through this book, The Power of Women. And let me start on a narrative mode. Once upon a time there were queens and princesses, and they ruled countries, commanded armies, and made themselves obeyed. Their lives were full of possibilities, of powers, and of projects, and their names were Artemisia of Halicarnassus. We heard about her, Antigone, Jocasta, or Aethra. Ancient historiography recounts their marvelous exploits, while classical tragedy resurrects them on stage. In societies profoundly hostile to women, these exceptional and singular individuals belonged to an aristocratic past or lived in a royal elsewhere. And in this possible world, they were themselves possible. They could be imagined as such, and the Greeks knew how to do so. But the same Greeks invented democracy, the power, the kratos of the people, demos, as a form of government. And now women of this temper, women able to deliberate, to govern, and to defend the state, well, these women became purely and simply inconceivable or merely imaginary. Why on earth should this have happened? Well, the early scene of democracy in ancient Greece shows us that the citizens of a city in which it is the demos that holds power and rules must be endowed, first of all, not with intellectual qualities, such as intelligence or wisdom, but with a different form of excellence, courage, or, as Aristotle also calls it, warlike excellence, polemike arete. When the multitude governs the state with a view to what is useful to all, it is called by the name common to all political orders, namely polity, politeia. And this happens reasonably, for while it is possible for one man or a few to excel in virtue, arete, when the number is greater, it is difficult for them to possess an excellence which would be perfect in all its forms. But they can distinguish themselves in military virtue, for this is found in the multitude, in a Platos, and therefore, with this form of constitution, a polity, the government of the many, in the better form for Aristotle, the class of men who fight in war for the state is the most powerful, and it is those who possess arms who are admitted to the government. This is in Politics 3. Now, the problems attributed to Aristotle echo this argument. Why do cities honor courage to the highest degree, although this is not the best form of excellence? This is a puzzle. The answer is that cities are constantly at war, so they reward what is most useful to them. So, courage. This is the virtue affordable to a multitude. This is the distinctly democratic virtue. Now, the Greek word for courage is andreia, a noun semantically connected to the word aner, namely man as a male human being, as opposed to anthropos, the generic human being. Andreia literally means maleness, virility. Now, courage And virility is a decision to withstand danger for the sake of a noble end. This is Aristotle speaking. An ideal, however, is not enough to spring into action. An active, combative, and commanding energy called thumos, spiritedness, contributes synergy to courage, to Andrea. So you need thumos to be capable of Andrea, but thumos is unequally distributed among living beings and especially human beings. The males are better equipped. Aristotle, and Aristotle will accompany us, insist on this disparity. Less thumos equals less Andrea. Handout number 4. A major cultural consequence here from these premises and these conclusions. As a matter of fact, in polis where the many, the Platos or the demos rule, women are excluded from the political space. But this simple fact is not an accident. It ought to be the case that only men have the monopoly of political deliberation and action. And why? Because they can. Only males are able to and deserve to exercise political authority and responsibility. Furthermore, these males must function morally and sexually as males. No feminization allowed. Those who enter politics must be accountable for their use of their body. The people must know what they do with their anatomical endowment. Democracy is intrusive. We must make sure that men are real men. Their sexual activity must conform to a certain model of masculinity. Now, philosophers tend to rationalize women's natural defectiveness as softness, the most debilitating effects of which are, on the one hand, the lack of courage, precisely, the lack of Andrea, the lack of manliness, and on the other, a natural infirmity, invalidity in the very activity of deliberating and making decisions. Aristotle, once again, synthesizes a powerful theory. Let us read his thought as if Aristotle were the most perceptive and systematic anthropologist of his own culture. So I'm not reading Aristotle as one author in the history of philosophy, but as an observer and a thinker who makes sense of the societies comparatively in which he lives, trying to somehow bring to the fore the logic of the world in which he lives. So man is able to determine what to do. Woman, whose deliberative faculty is without authority, acuron, we have already looked at that text with Benjamin Straumann. So woman whose deliberative faculty is without authority, acuron, namely invalid, as it will be said in Latin, well, woman is unable to resolve to do so. Handout number 10. Why this disability? It is really a disability. An adult and free man is able to come to a decision thanks to the internal leader, to hegumenon of his soul, a leader who brings to an end and to fruition a long decision-making process. This is the hegemonic part of the soul for Aristotle. A decider brings himself to announce what to do, Aristotle claims, once again, like a Homeric king. Handout number 8. Now, this analogy says it all. Who has not listened to the performance of the Iliad in Athens? Homeric kings, not queens, are warriors and commanders in chief, boiling with thumos. Behind thumos, you have to thermon, heat, natural heat. So fervor, ardor, the ability precisely to get all exercised and to bring yourself into a mode of action. This is about thumos, and thumos depends upon heat. So what is wrong with women? What is it that makes them men, only men, imperious leaders for others and for themselves? Well, men and males in general are precisely full of spiritedness. Women and other females are simply insufficiently bestowed with thumos. Number 4. Now, let's magnify this notion of thumos. Thumos is a synergic factor of courage. Number 3, I already mentioned that. Dispirited living beings, athumotera, are necessarily cowards. Furthermore, it is always on account of thumos that males are naturally inclined to lead. It is from this faculty that power to command and love of freedom are in all cases derived, because spiritedness is a commanding and indomitable element. By nature, the male is more inclined to command than the female, mainly because capable of governing. These are a certain kind of males. So we can follow the train of thought here. There is a disposition to be a leader and to fight in particular for liberty, and to be courageous and manly. In the same logic, the capacity to deliberate with authority is due to the presence of a sort of private Homeric King inside. So it's not Socrates' diamond that you have in yourself. You have, if you are a man, a Homeric King. It is precisely a manner of authority, I insist on this point, to hegumenon, that is needed to complete, to clinch, to get to the bottom of a dilemma or of a meandering deliberation. So woman is content to be submissive, and the handout is overloaded with this kind of passages, number 3, 4, 5, 6. Man is a political animal. This is easy. Woman is a domestic animal. Nature is supposed to found these norms that seem to be imposed on everyone's mind and that organize the family around the leader who is a husband, a father, and the master of slaves. It is Aristotle who theorizes all these distinctions, which are both grounded in physis as a given and also good for society. But Aristotle's thought is not disconnected from the shared knowledge, the social representations, or what we can call the mentality of ordinary people. In the ancient city, the polis, the self-government of the people, requires precisely those virtues, faculties, and passions which women do not have. This again is rooted in their nature. Let us listen for a second to the public discourse of Athenian politicians who are only and exclusively men, constantly and emphatically addressed as precisely Athenian men, andres Athenai. Women are not there, and when they happen to be mentioned, they are seen from the standpoint of men. For instance, the speaker of the pseudo-Demosthenes speech against Neaira claims that hetairai we keep for the sake of pleasure, concubines for daily care of the body, and wives for making legitimate children and for faithful guardianship of our household possessions. This is the public perception of women's place and destiny. They are in the household and at the service of men. In contrast, men are all over the place, speaking, deciding, battling, trying to gain before the people in a popular assembly or in a law court. And these men must be manly, courageous, and non-effeminate, as the speeches of another prominent public figure, Aeschines, demonstrate. Do you want to vilify a political rival? Easy. Shout in front of the crowd that he is feminine. Tell them how he behaves, how he dresses, how he has sex. They are all men undressed. and they will understand what you mean. This is not merely a matter of convention, of social construction, or of social norm. It is also a matter of character, and character, ethos, is a dispositional state, hexis of the soul, which is acquired through education. Indeed, and this is not just Aristotle's language, but also precisely Aeschylus's language. But from the starting point of a bodily equipment, a male body, which has to be lived in a certain way consistently, drag performances, cross-dressing, transgender mores are incongruous, contradictory, thus puzzling. The comic theater represent mockingly the reaction of an ordinary male citizen, for instance, when he is confronted with what we would call the expression of an androgynous gender identity. At the beginning of The Women at the Thesmophoria, a play by Aristophanes, here is a very elegant poet composing, singing a song in a dulcet, shrill voice, sporting garments and accessories typical of women, colorful, diaphanous, decorative, soft. Wow, this is the ordinary Athenian. Really? The regular guy is spellbound. But what is this, he asked. And he announced immediately that he's going to sodomize this confusing creature. In real life, it is absolutely imperative to exclude these soft human beings, women, and their mimetic emulators from the political arena. Now, Christianity later will nail the feminine to the same kind of impotence and moreover to an extra flaw, irrationality. The ancient woman was unable to fight, to give orders, to carry out her decision like a Homeric king, as Aristotle put it. Now, according to the great medieval theorists like Thomas Aquinas and Albert the Great, woman becomes incapable of linking coherent reflections, driven as she is by her fluid complexion. And here we jump to handout 10, 11, and 12. The male who was physiologically hotter and more spirited than the female now, in this new context, becomes, as a bonus, so to speak, a more methodical reasoner. These prejudices remained a matter of course until the Enlightenment. Jean-Jacques Rousseau happily endorses them all. Let young girls confine themselves to taste, to conventional ideas, and to the small world of their little families. Let them not try to reason. Since they are not the same as men, women cannot be the equal of men. That would be to assert rights that are not meant for them. In the end, it is to the philosophers who replace the natural law and laws of nature with human rights, notably Nicolas de Condorcet, that we owe everything that makes emancipation and equality possible, and this time for good. But like everything that comes to us from the Enlightenment, feminism is an intermittent and interminable, never-ending project, always perfectible and constantly hindered. In The Power of Women, I have tried to reconstruct the discursive aspects of this cultural history. For if there is one assemblage of thoughts that has shaped ways of living, of legislating, and of educating people for centuries, it is that of the difference between the sexes. These are not vague ideas or scattered statements, but arguments, turns of phrase, trains of thought, sequences of premises and conclusions. Sexism is a syllogism. All women are unpredictable, incoherent, pusillanimous. I'm a woman, therefore I am pusillanimous, incoherent, unpredictable, and so on. We can identify a few crucial moments in the Middle Ages and in the modern age when the habits of arranging words were changed, the deduction were adjusted, the keywords were updated. And then suddenly, thanks to singular women and men, such as François Poulain de la Barre, we have heard from Guillaume Leduc, or Nicolas de Condorcet, Anthony has already alluded to his definitive jump out of the paradigm. Well, thanks to these singular women and men, the most repetitive, authorized, and automatic thinking comes to be challenged. By pay attention to the longevity and even the viscosity of the reasoning shaped in Greek culture and taken up again over the course of several centuries, we can highlight a few stubborn ideological ideas that carry consequences. And the point of arrival for me is the democratic world of today. Just one symptom. In 2020, the High Council for Equality between Women and Men published an annual report on the state of sexism in France. What does emerge? It emerged that women still experience their scarcity in positions of high responsibility as an intrusion and as an usurpation, an intrusion into a universe of solidarity, homogeneity, fratriarchy, as a feminist sociologist, Françoise Gaspard, would say. Under these conditions, women are led to doubt their legitimacy. Why exactly? Because upstream of this stereotype and attitudes, the constant reminder of the body, of the family, of the children, there is a major premise, a fundamental suspicion, an age-old question mark. Are they not perhaps incompetent? Are they not perhaps less capable? Do they have the stuff, the temperament, the constitution that predisposes them, us, to take the lead in public affairs? So we decipher and wonder, what can women do? What can women be? And this question challenges us to rethink the very notion of power. Power is not only domination, oppression, punishment, nor is it discipline or simply an apparatus. The verb power expresses, first of all, possibility and capacity. To be able to is to have the right to, but also to be in a position to. It is to be authorized to, but also to be able once again to. So this semantic field includes, first of all, the values of positive freedom dear to liberal political thought and the very notion of right, but the possible as a right to do, to say, to decide often implies the questioning of another subjective resources. Am I able, once again, to do, to say, to decide? The junction of right and ability, and more precisely, the subordination of right to ability, is essential in the history of gender difference. For in this history, women are not simply excluded de facto from places of power. They are supposedly unable to exercise power. This is a reassuringly banal way of thinking, and this is why history sheds light on this. When we doubt women, when we fail to give an individual woman the benefit of the doubt also, we are on safe ground. We are on the side of Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas and Albert the Great and many other I haven't mentioned now today, first in ancient Greece and then in the pre-modern world that the Aristotelian tradition relayed by Christianity and Arab thought has shaped intellectually until the 18th century. The Aristotelian tradition of interconnected knowledge has formed a true paradigm, and natural law is its touchstone. What do I mean exactly? Aristotle lays the groundwork for the difference between the sexes, for he theorizes male specificity, warmth, ardor, virility, courage, combativeness, civic excellence, the vocation to deliberate and govern, marital and paternal authority, all in one string. But he also observes how all these abilities naturally link up so that the very first natural society, a man, his wife, his children, and his slaves, can blossom into ever larger communities. Nature, physis, wants this continuity and purpose. It is both a state of affairs and a goal for the better. The authority of husband over wife, father over children, master over slaves is natural in this double meaning, a matter of fact and the best. Aristotle stands at the forefront, therefore, of a line of thought that has shaped our beliefs and education for over 2 millennia. It is literally by commenting on Aristotle's politics that generations of philosophers and jurists have corroborated the principles of this normative nature. This is a very deep and massive history of which I have tried to highlight crucial moments in the power of women. Now, the same Aristotelian thread links Thomas Aquinas' ideas on the lex naturalis, the words of the Jewish naturalist who extended the same tradition into the 18th century, and those of someone like Jean-Jacques Rousseau on the laws of nature. Human beings carry within themselves, deep down, an innate perception. Anthony Pagden has mentioned precisely the fundamental notion of innatism, of innate ideas. An innate perception of something, of the fundamental norms that contribute to something, to the conservation of the created world. And among these basic precepts is the principle that we must form a family and raise children, because the conservation of the created world requires procreation. The family is a natural society, therefore, in which the man commands. Why? Because he is so disposed. And the woman obeys. Why? Because she is so disposed. She assists, she helps, because she is equipped only for that. And this is for the best. So the qualitative, ethical, natural difference between women and men is part of the great design of procreating in order to keep the world going and educating children for the best, thanks to this division of tasks and to this innate predisposition. So I could stop because there is so much to say, but we are at the end of this very dense, long, intense afternoon without a break. And so let me just finish with precisely and yet again an allusion to Condorcet, an allusion to a paradigm shift, really a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift is just letting go the connection between dispositions on the one hand and laws come innate precepts of what is normative for the best on the other, and the rights that human beings can hold in a society. So getting out of this paradigm for Condorcet means to say what this incredibly wonderful and really exciting and moving sentence Anthony Pagden has already quoted, which is that there is a minimum common denominator among human beings, and this is to be sentient being, to be sensible, to be capable of moral ideas, and to be capable of reasoning simply, very simply about these moral ideas. And as long as human beings are human, they all share this ability, this capacity. Intersectionality here, this runs for women and men, and for all the ethnicities, for all the races, we all belong in the same humankind. And because we are endowed with this very simple faculty, we all are capable of holding rights, and the right of fabricating the laws, of being part of society, of being citizens, and being involved actively in politics is and must be among these basic rights, only grounded on this really minimum common denominator. And I don't see how we can go anywhere if not starting from there. Thank you very much for your patience.